And we're live with his Jeffness, and we'll be discussing
And the SP Spaz.
the not ASP Spaz, the SP Spaz.
Yep.
And let's really go for this. He has a very good video
We
called
are doing Homicide, the City That Bleeds.
Yes, but a good video on his channel called ESTP's Why. A great one called Extrovert Does Not Equal Social Wizard, and a good one called ESFP Preference. ESFP, not big. ESFP Preference versus Reality. And take it away, Jeff.
All right. Well, if you've got the, did you take pictures of the credit stuff? At the
Yep.
beginning?
I'll just put that on. I will go to pictures, VLC snaps. Look, let's see how many I took. I think I took about 30 snaps.
Well, anyway, the episode is called The City That Bleeds. Originally aired January 27th, 1995 on NBC. It was the 13th episode of season 3. And I'm punching up this.
Do you want me to start with who wrote it?
Sure.
Or the guest cast?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like, the writer-directors.
Okay. Right. Next time I'll grab the director, but
okay.
Hopefully you can see that. Can you see
Well,
that?
as you can see, yeah, I have to go back and forth on the iPad because I can't see both at the same time. But as you can see, Julie Martin and Jorge Zamancona, I love saying that name. Story by James Yoshimura and Bonnie Mark. And the director was actually Tim Hunter. I don't remember off the top of my head whether he had directed an episode before that or not. But anyway. Okay, so episode recap. Howard, Munch, Bolander, and Felton meet and prepare to execute a warrant on Glenn Holton, a convicted pedophile and suspected murderer. A hungover Stanley the Dancing Bear, Bolander, and the other 3 detectives equip themselves with bulletproof vests. Nearing the apartment of Holton, Felton and Howard walk arm in arm separate from Bolander and Munch. The 4 detectives then meet up at the door to the building. It appears someone notices the police when the camera moves behind one of the apartment windows and pans down them. Felton is about to enter when Howard reminds him she is to go first, as she is the primary on this case. The detectives enter the building and make their way up the stairs and approach the door of room 201, but are stopped in their tracks. Someone opens fire on the detectives from above. Howard is struck first in the chest, followed by Felton in the leg and shoulder, and lastly Bolander in the head. G bursts into the precinct where the rest of the detectives are joking around and having a good time. The atmosphere changes quickly when he states that officers are down. G makes Pembleton the new primary on this case. Pembleton, along with Lewis and Bayless, make their way to the apartment while G heads to the hospital. Back at the bloodied apartment, the detectives find out that the others went to the wrong door, 201, while the suspect lives in room 210. Bolander's old partner, Mitch Drummond, finds G and offers his assistance on the case. Also, Detective Teresa Walker from Sex Crimes, who specializes in psychology and dealing with pedophiles, talks with Pembleton and offers her assistance. Lewis inquires on why the detectives went to the wrong room in the first place. He speaks with the secretary, Mary Pendergast, and discovers that she wrote the wrong room number down, 201 instead of 210. Lewis later informs G of the clerical error. G vows to have her fired. Pembleton and Walker speak with Holton's psychiatrist of many years. Bayless and Mitch visit the school of one of Holton's victims. Later, Pembleton and Walker visit one of Holton's former prison inmates and get a possible location. All of the detectives head to this possible location, but Holton evades them. Felton regains consciousness again and has a visit from his wife. Bolander and Howard are still unconscious. Howard's father and brother pay a visit as well. Okay, so we'll go and see what what our friend David to say about it.
Is he the one with the weird ears and him?
If you think that's weird, then yes.
No. Is he the one like Dave 22K is something like
that? I just said what it is.
Oh, I think you sound cut out.
226 Morris.
Oh, right, him, yeah.
Okay. Putting the life of a character on a TV show in jeopardy is a fairly common practice, but one wonders how seriously one can consider these threats to be, considering that creators of television dramas are attached to a character. There are exceptions to this rule. David E. Kelley has made something of a career of killing regulars on his series, but for the most part, they don't kill them because they want to consider the possibilities of bringing them back. The creators of Homicide clearly didn't have a problem killing a character off, and they no doubt realized from the emotional drama that they had managed to mine from Cressetti that there was enormous potential in playing with the characters. They did, however, have a problem with using violence. Indeed, Tom Fontana was very reluctant to have a gun fired on the show, much less having 3 of his characters get shot. It seemed out of sync with the original plan to keep Homicide from becoming a typical police drama relying on guns being fired. But the show was coming to the end of its 3rd season. NBC was only committed to 13 episodes. They later added 7 more, and the ratings were still mediocre. So probably to goose the ratings more than anything else, this story was written involving the shooting of 3 of the series regulars when they went to serve an arrest warrant. The strategy worked. The episode got some of the highest ratings in the show's history, but no one on the staff was particularly thrilled about what was done in order to get these numbers. Okay, as reluctant as the writers were probably to write the opening teaser in The City That Bleeds, one cannot deny that it was a very effective scene. Everything seems to be going perfectly normal as Bolander, Felton, Howard, and Munch go to arrest a suspect for the murder of a 10-year-old. They talk about last night at the waterfront. Felton makes a show of letting Howard walk in first. Then suddenly, in a series of fast cuts, we see the detectives fired upon. Interestingly enough, though we see the gun fired and the detectives going down, we never actually see them get shot. In this way, Homicide is playing against the grain.
Wait a minute, I've got grabs of them getting shot.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he means by that.
We've got the bullets coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. You don't see the actual, bullet go in, but, other than that, it was...
I mean, we got this with Felton. I mean, I've got Kay being hit there with the bullet coming out of a vest.
Anyway,
and then we've got Felton there, and then in his leg. Maybe the DVD added it.
No, it's nothing added. A similar pattern occurs when G hears about the shooting. Hearing the 3 of his men are shot, G runs to the hospital, and he makes it clear that the few who remain must get themselves ready to catch the shooter. Bayless and Lewis are particularly rocked by what has happened. Tim feels despair and guilt that he wasn't shot. Actually, it's guilt about that he's glad he wasn't shot is what it really was. But Pembleton, however, shows the same cold and professional detachment that he would as if the 3 detectives who had been shot were strangers, and seems annoyed when Bayless says he does. He knows that this is wrong, but he can't let himself think about whether people he worked with may never come back. It's how he works. Some detectives bear their feelings in odd ways, as is in the case with Detective Mitch Drummond, Bolander's former partner, one who Munch was always being unfavorably compared to in the first season. He leaves his normal assignment to try to catch the man who did this. He may not have always gotten along with Stan, but he's pretty sure that his partner would do the same for him. His current partner is quite understandably rattled by what has happened. When G goes to visit the detectives in the hospital, Munch is as close as going to pieces as he gets. He obsesses about the fact that his friend's blood is on his shoes, and the way the doctors and how they say when he wakes up, when it's really if. The strongest reaction, and perhaps the most stunning, is Giardello. He seems all right in his first couple of trips to the hospital, even puts up a brave face for Felton's kids when his mother arrives. When their mother arrives, is what I should say. But it soon becomes clear that this is a facade. When he learns from Meldrick that the detectives went to the wrong address because the case report was mistyped, he demands the woman who botched to be fired. He then praises the strength and fortitude of his detectives while driving back. Then he asks Mildred to stop the car and has a minor meltdown. He compares the helplessness and the pain that he's feeling to that of an incident that happened to his daughter Charisse 18 years ago. He's responsible for his detectives, but he cannot help them through their darkest hour. And speaking of the detectives after the shootings, we don't see a great deal of them after they get shot. The writers know that while they care about the conditions of their friends, they are police first, and they want to get the man who shot them. The obvious candidate for that title was Glenn Holton, a repeat sex offender who committed the murder of a 10-year-old boy. This leads into a dark matter that crime shows don't normally traffic in, child molestation. Or this might have been written before a special victims unit and shows like that. But this is a darker sin even than murder. Even some of the criminals who they investigate think that there's something perverse about pedophilia. This is brought out in the one funny moment in the show when the owner of a pornographic theater says she wouldn't cater to the sort of individual. Yeah, I wondered if that was a line Ben would write down, because when she says the thing about, I've got men who like women, men who like men, men who like animals, men who like women and animals. What I don't cater to is sick freaks like this, who like children. So anyway, that was some nice dark humor there.
Yeah, I didn't find that funny because of the subject matter.
Okay. We get more insight from sex crime detective Teresa Walker, an expert on these sorts of people. She is a strong, forceful person, one who's not even afraid to go head-to-head with events like this that can even unify the bosses. Captain Barnafather comes down and publicly offers support to Lieutenant Russer, and even holds a press conference about them. Anyway, it is not until the end of the episode that we get any idea how the detectives are doing. Bolander was shot in the head and will not even be conscious until... Well, I'm not going to leave that... Not going to say the rest of that. Howard was shot in the heart and was barely clinging to life. Felton escapes with minor injuries and is conscious by the episode's end. His first concern is for his partner, and he's already feeling guilt for what happened. This is how detectives think they are always concerned. The city that bleeds ends with a major operation to cap, but they come up empty. Most other police shows the deal with police getting shot will have the suspect in custody by the end of the episode. Homicide does not. And aside from the violence, almost everything relates to the crime is spot on. My score 9.25. So anyway, that's what he had to say. What do you have to say, Ben?
Well, I like the fact that that review addressed the thing about the writers didn't necessarily want to write this kind of episode, but given they had to write it, they did a good job. I think that Giardello, 10 out of 10 for his acting. I think that Munch, pretty much the first time in the series, in the show's run, that he's had to do some proper acting, and it just squeaked by in that scene. I think that the dialogue all through is well written and a very good. The scene with I love the fact that he has these stories with so much detail that it makes them so memorable.
Yep.
And that was the highlight for me. The Giardello thing, and then also towards the end, as you see, it starts to hit Frank Pembleton.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great character moments along the way in terms of how they react to things and in the interactions with each other. How the stuff Pembleton goes through in contrast to Bayless and Lewis and G. Because they all, like, in addition to how they react themselves, they also have an idea, sort of this idea of how everybody else should be reacting too. Almost all of them say something to somebody else about, what they're doing. So it's like the natural roles sort of come out, and you have that discussion that Ben and I have had many times about guilt and the difference between how artisans and guardians are affected by that, and you see it come out in this episode because of how Bayless talks about how he's guilty for feeling good he wasn't the one shot, and Pembleton basically is like, well, that's you, I don't feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
and none of those things are going to help. You know, he's focused. He's singularly focused on his job of solving the case, and even through that, there's little moments like where I won't say you're getting enjoyment out, but there is a little bit like there's just that adrenaline, you know, and you know the rush of the experience, and so he's got the, you know, time in the office where he hears that Holton said he's going to hell, and he says he's right, and then he has the other guy that's behind bars in the prison that he goes to visit, where he gives him his word they'll treat him gently when they find him, you know, just little things like that, you know, that are sort of again would be handled differently by a character with a different personality. So it's just cool to see that little the true to life and true to character moments like that.
Yeah.
And Lewis wasn't really mentioned much in that thing, but Lewis is kind of talking about like what it feels like to get shot, and you know, things about how likely it is versus anything else. And so you get a little exchange between him and Bayless. So everybody sort of has their own take on what's going on, and I like the continuity of having the family members come in.
Yeah.
You know, don't just forget that they've got families. So, to me, I thought just a lot of little touches and details in it that just made it flow really well and you know, be really good.
Yeah, I'm thinking about we got a little detail. Is this the first time we saw Felton's hairy chest?
No, I'm thinking there was an episode where he had his shirt off when he was with Russert, but I could be remembering wrong.
I think he was in his vest in that. He's if we see here, what we can see from this image here is it's not exactly Bayless when he comes to having his shirt off.
And there'll be a line about that in the next episode too.
Wow, kicking a guy when he's down.
The next episode features a perhaps my favorite Felton Lewis scene that they ever had. I'll just put it that way. The scene from See No Evil when they're in the bathroom and fighting about the guy that shot his dad, that was really good too. But this one might be even better than that. But anyway, that's next episode. So yeah, here we have a great G story going on that gets me to tear up every time, I confess, about his daughter. I'm a sucker for sob stories anyway, but especially when they're people's kids. Those really get to me, so. When your child can't do anything about it is just one of the worst.
I think the actual scenes in the hospital were good. They look quite realistic.
Yeah, to the doctor and you know, yeah, everything was. It's hard to find much to complain about in this one. They even had a realistic looking pawn shop owner with the suit that looked like it was from the 70s.
They talked about a theatre. Why would they have like porno theatres? Then they got a VHS. They used to have those in the 70s.
Some people like to go out, you know.
I tell you what, that was one of the worst jobs to have.
That's how Pee Wee Herman got busted.
Well, not just that, is one of the worst jobs to have is working in a porno theatre in the 60s, and you've got to clean up after the guys.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. It wasn't much better in the 90s than it was in the 60s.
Yeah, I bet some rubber gloves were worn. Right. I don't think there's anything much else to say about the episode, because in terms of plot, it's pretty straightforward. I like the fact what the guy said there about the writers, that background information. Talked about the scene with G. We've talked about Pembleton. How towards the end he was starting to get, and I'm like, you know, he said, "Oh, you're one of those guys that don't." I'm that type of person as well, where in the crisis where I don't think it's real, and then I'll maybe accept it later on. Then it will dawn on me. But I am the sort of person who goes into shock.
I think, you know, in his case, like, if he hadn't been the primary detective, he might have been going through very different feelings. But because he was able to sink himself into that, where all of his focus was on that, which is where he shines anyway, is when he's doing, you know, he's doing his work. He's, you know, I mean, obviously he's at his best when he's in the box, but even before that, he's still, you know, he takes charge of when he needs to, you know, of coordinating stuff. And even that, you see some frustration and a point. One of the first times, I think, where Bayless really gets a handle on what he needs to tell Frank, because a lot of times he's just kind of doing his little kind of incongruous interference in something with Frank. But this time it's like you can tell he strikes a nerve with Frank, that he says the right thing because Frank reacts like he actually got through to him a little bit, like, okay, you know, I understand what you mean about it's everybody's case, you know.
And of course,
he's so singularly focused that he's looking at it as, this is my case and this is what I have to do for me. And when he gets reminded about that, it sort of gives him a little bit of a wider perspective on it.
and also they're careful with the Bayless character, that they realise he's developing and he's getting less and less green as they go along.
Yeah, and it's natural to me, because it's like more than anything else on the job is, you know, Frank is the person that he's had the most experiences with, so he's getting to know him better, and so he can.
Yeah, so I don't think there's much else.
You say a little bit more, because I got to answer the phone.
Okay, right then, folks. Right, so I will go to. We can go through some of these images, and this is a crummy old TV that they did have some crummy TVs in America that weren't made in Japan and South Korea. But this is an example of that police would have, like, really old stuff, really old equipment. But it's like in the 1990s, and they've got like typewriters and.
Yeah, I work in a job that's similar in terms of how long it takes them to get with the program and new technology. So
look how young this guy looks.
He does have a young-looking face. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks about 14. If you like dyed his hair.
I don't think he looks 14, as I've said before. Ben and I disagree on that.
But if you dyed his hair, people would be asking him for ID.
Well, that may be true. And so Clayton LeBeau is blessed with youthful looks way beyond when he was actually young. So.
What does he look like now? How old is he now?
I don't know. I'm actually trying to look that up right now and see if I can find out.
One thing we could do in future is to, like, show what the cast look like now.
Yeah, well, can do that.
I could do that.
Do that at the end of the series, when everything's over. As a
Ooh,
nice
way to
tribute
hook
to
me in.
everybody. Clayton is currently 61, so that
Bloody
means
hell!
that in 95 he
Bloody
would have
hell!
been 41.
Bloody
Well,
hell!
actually, he was probably 40 when this episode was filmed and turned 41
That's
by the
old.
time it was aired. So.
No bones about it. When you get to 60, you're in the old stage. I mean, you
Yeah,
can
he's
tell
from
yourself
Yonkers,
50's.
New York.
You can tell yourself 50's the new 40, but once you get to 60, you sort of got to accept you're getting a bit on a bit.
Yeah, he continued to appear in things made by the same people, Fontana and David Simon, because he was on The Corner and he was on The Wire. And also Law and Order: Criminal Intent.
Right, I don't think there's much else. Do you think there's anything else we can say about the episode?
Well,
Go ahead.
I guess not a lot. I will say, I guess it's kind of one of those, since it sort of starts a story that, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about as it goes on, but, that'll come up as it comes up. So,
So
I think the next episode does not have quite as much frenetic action as this one has, but it does still have some really great moments. And like I said, there's a great scene in the hospital with Felton and Lewis, and a lot of other good stuff. So join us next time for Dead End.
Ooh. So it's goodbye from me, folks.
Goodbye.